I need someone to tell me, like, that you absolutely mean it. If the Super Bowl does not happen, but Saquon Barkley would have gotten the all-time single-season rushing record, that would be any consolation to you. Because I find it incredibly hard to believe that there's somebody out there in this fan base. This is a fan base that when teams have expectations of a championship caliber and you fall short in any capacity, people lose their mind.
It's talked about for years.
Absolutely. Think about how much we talk about 2022. Yep. How much we talk about the Phillies in 2023. Not so much 22 for them, but 23 when they had the chance playing the Arizona Diamondbacks in the NL the NL Championship Series. Yeah, I know. We're in so many big series, which is a good thing.
And then this year against the Mets.
Exactly. It's just when you have these expectations, there is no consolation prize. And you might be able to convince yourself right now, as we sit here on, January 3rd, 2025, that it would be a nice consolation if Saquon could get this. And that would make you feel better at night when you lay your head down to rest knowing, the Eagles didn't win the Super Bowl, but at least Saquon got his record. That's BS. I'll tell you right now that is BS. And if you're not willing to admit it, I'm here to bring you to that realization yourself, and that is why this is the right decision. So if you think you have an argument that convinced myself and Silvana Keller and Sean Rodman, who's on the board today, that is something that will be a consolation that makes up for the lack of a Super Bowl for this team, this incredibly talented team, one of the best defenses in football, one of the best offenses in football, health on their side, I'm going to tell you that you are short-sighted, you are being distracted by a record that was not the goal at the start of this season, and you are flat-out lying to yourself. That is how I feel, and that's why the word of the day is consolation, because I don't think there is a consolation prize that Philadelphia Eagles fans will be comfortable with short of a Super Bowl in a season like this.
I will even just flat out say that I think that you're wrong if you think that in general, because to me it is ridiculous. And I was actually having this conversation on New Year's Eve, and man, I just almost wanted to get up away and walk away from the table because it's so infuriating, some of the excuses and some of the reasoning that I've heard. Say, one of them that I've heard, and I've also gotten some texts about this, usually producing the show, is that they think that Saquon getting the record, especially against the Giants, would get the momentum and give the momentum for the playoffs so much more momentum for the playoffs and to get to the Super Bowl, which I don't think is true whatsoever. I don't think that this is the ultimate goal that these guys had, first of all, coming into the season, and now heading into the playoffs. It's not their first train of thought is about this record. Clearly, they wanted to hit the milestone of 2,000 yards, but now you're not looking at the health of the team, the safety of the team, and also taking advantage of this opportunity to head into the playoffs as healthy as you are, like you said, especially looking at other teams like the Lions that are really getting decimated by injuries, especially on their defense. To me, it's just puzzling that you would want your offensive line more so. For me, I'm looking at the offensive line, and I'm like, these guys got to get off their feet. They've been on their feet since week 5. They had a mini-bye a little bit ago. I think that was around the first time they versed the Commanders was their mini-bye.
Right.
But you see these guys getting nicked up. Mekhi Becton has had some struggles. Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson. What are we doing here? You want to send those guys back out there? And does anyone ever realize that majority of Saquon's yards come in the second half? So what are you going to do? You're going to put him out there for the first half. If he doesn't get it, you're going to make them go back out for the second half? How is that beneficial to you whatsoever?
All of these very, very valid points. The one thing that I will say that, I understand the conversation about momentum. I understand wanting the team. If we step a little bit outside of the Saquon Barkley conversation, it's adjacent to it. But if your argument is not only could you go for the record, but you could also continue to roll towards the postseason. You don't want to see this team miss a step. I do understand that a little bit, but let me ask you something. And you're going to have to do me a favor and take seeding out of it, because I understand that if the Detroit Lions beat the Minnesota Vikings this weekend on Sunday Night Football, they will be the 1 seed. They will have a first-round bye. They will have home field advantage as long as they play through the NFC side of the bracket. So that is a major advantage. So take the seeding out of it, because I get why you want to go after the 1 seed. I get why that's an advantageous position. I'm not saying just it's apples to apples to switch positions. But the Detroit Lions, if they beat the Minnesota Vikings this Sunday night, will have momentum heading into the postseason.
Absolutely.
But would you really switch the place that you're at health-wise with where the Detroit Lions are right now, do you really think that there's anybody in Detroit that's saying, well, yeah, we're as healthy as we need to be? Health is the number one part of the equation for that team. That team's immensely talented. And frankly, there's a strong argument to be made that the Detroit Lions, when healthy, fully, are the best team in the NFC. Now, the reason that the Eagles have put themselves in that conversation is they're also incredibly talented and they're incredibly healthy. So momentum is key, but momentum doesn't override major injuries. And anytime you step on the football field in a competitive capacity, you're risking the chance to lose somebody. It's not just Saquon. You made a great point, Sil. It's the offensive line.
Could be your receivers.
It could be
your quarterback.
It could be. Like, you wouldn't want to have someone out there. Like, you wouldn't want Tanner McKee out there with Saquon Barkley going for it, because that means they're just going to stack the box. They're going to send basically all 11 guys after Saquon Barkley.
I would.
And you want then Jalen Hurts to potentially go out there to run the actual offense, and he's still not cleared from concussion protocol. There's just too much at risk to play Saquon Barkley. It's not a conversation in a vacuum. So there's a lot that goes into it. And ultimately what this comes down to, I'd love your responses on the phone line, on the text line, 610-632-0975 is how you jump into the program today here on the best show ever on 97.5 The Fanatic and NBC Sports Philadelphia. I need to know, make this argument to me that the rushing record, the all-time single-season rushing record, is any type of consolation for not cashing in on a Super Bowl opportunity. And I'll tell you what, I remember pre-2017, 2018. I remember what this fan base used to be like before we had one. The Super Bowl was the end-all, be-all. It was the holy grail. It was the fountain of youth.
I was raised thinking that I would never see an Eagles Super Bowl in my lifetime because
Everybody
this was Philadelphia. It would never happen. It would be amazing if you were even able to get the opportunity to see them get to the Super Bowl in your lifetime.
And now all of a sudden we have this record flash in front of us that nobody in this city has ever really considered as like this ultimate pantheon of what we want to see an Eagles player accomplish. Like, it's a, hey, how cool would this be? But the Super Bowl was a necessity, and it still should be. So if you're going to tell me that that is a consolation prize that makes up for risking a chance to win only the second Lombardi in the history of this franchise, I think you're crazy. And I'd love to hear your argument.
Well,
because even if I think they're crazy still, I'd love to hear what the people have to say on that.
Well, that might make just one of us. But I think a lot of the conversation and a lot of the reason that people want to see the record and they're not so worried about it is because they think that it's almost a given that he will get the record and that more so he would get it in the first half. I think that's a big component of it. A lot of people are sure that it would be a shoo-in. This is the Giants. You know, it would be very easy for Saquon to get 101 yards in one half compared to the chances to the Super Bowl. For some reason, all of a sudden when this record was brought into the equation, people are now acting like the Eagles' road to the Super Bowl is not as high of a possibility. It's almost like now they're like, you know what? What are the odds that we actually get to the Super Bowl, right? I mean, it's pretty difficult, but the odds of getting this record are really, really high because he's a great back, and we're going up against the New York Giants, 3-13. You know, it would be so easy to run against this Giants defense. I think they're just losing sight of the fact that it's not a given. And do you want him to try and play 4 quarters or 3 quarters or however long it takes to try and get this record, and it's still not a given? They would do anything to make sure that this record is not broken against them. They know the storyline.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you, I do live in the camp that if Saquon Barkley were to play on Sunday, he's getting the record. Like, I think it's an absolute stone cold lock.
I don't think it would happen before the first half, but I think he would get it.
That's the problem, because then he'd have to play the full game. If he was 25 yards away, we have a different conversation. But where things stand, they have made the decision. I stand by the decision. I understand it. It is too much risk. And if anyone is arguing that, well, if they don't win the Super Bowl, well, then they gave up an opportunity to accomplish this, I would give up the rushing record. The all-time single-season rushing record for Saquon Barkley. I would give that up 1,000,000 times over. If he does it next year and the year after and every year until he retires, I would give up this opportunity every time for the Eagles to have a better shot at the Super Bowl. Now, some people have made the argument that that's not our decision to make. And I understand that the players in the room, they're going to voice their opinion based on the stuff they've worked on. My body doesn't hurt right now from the Philadelphia Eagles season. I don't have a high ankle sprain, a wrist issue, nothing. I'm pretty healthy relatively. So I understand that the guys that have sacrificed all year to make this happen, both mentally, physically, emotionally, the stuff you have to go through in an NFL season, they want to accomplish it. But sometimes you have to understand players are gladiators. They are. And sometimes that leads to this whole idea of, hey, we're invincible. We're going to go get it. Our job is to fight. We're going to go fight. Our job is to crave contact. We're going to go crave contact. And it takes somebody off the field to tell them, hey, guys, I get it. But this is not what's best right now, and there are bigger things. And that's why Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie and everybody involved in that decision to rest players made the right call. So obviously this is going to be a huge part of the discussion as we continue through the program today. It has been all week. It's impossible to ignore the amount of discourse that has come from the Saquon Barkley decision. Our take a little bit different, where I need you to convince me that the consolation of the rushing record would make up for if the Eagles did not accomplish winning a Super Bowl this year. I don't think they're remotely on the same level of accomplishment, especially considering what I think this fan base is going after. But maybe I'm wrong with where our priorities lie. And then I might have to have a conversation with folks about your priorities being off when it comes to what the Eagles are set to accomplish. But
good way to start the new year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get your priorities in line, please.
It's a good thing. We're trying to help the people. I'm trying to bring people to what I believe to be the light, but I'm also open to dissenting opinions.
Well,
Something
we do
else.
agree.
Yeah, we agree. But there are people out there that clearly do disagree, and we'll hear from them throughout the show. But we're also going to do something, because this Saquon Barkley conversation, frankly, has been beat to death to some extent.
Almost.
The decision has been made. So whatever we come to terms with during this show today, they're not playing him on Sunday. So we're also going to look into things that could or are going to happen on Sunday, and there are going to be some other storylines that are important to Philadelphia Eagles fans. Like, it's not just the Saquon show today. No. There are some big things happening for the Eagles around the NFL. That's one of the first storylines. And we have 4 big storylines that we're going to get into throughout the show that are non-Saquon related, but are worth watching this weekend. And the first is the rooting interests in other games, including 2 big matchups. The Commanders have a big game. The Packers have a big game. Who do you look at in that for your potential opponent in the first round of the playoffs? Because I have a definitive favorite that I would like to see the Philadelphia Eagles play. And yes, they're divisional. I'll tell you why it's Washington coming up next. I'm Connor Thomas, sitting in for Tyrone Johnson. Silvana Kelleher to my left, in for Ricky Batalico, Sean Rodman on the board. And we're back after this for more Best Show Ever here on 97.5 The Fanatic and NBC Sports Philadelphia.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching our YouTube. If you want to help us out, go ahead and like and subscribe for us. If you liked what you saw, go right over here to our playlists and pick out whatever you want to watch.